99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. At 1,000 subscribers, I will post a series of special stories. Subscribe now. The vast emptiness of space stretched infinitely as Princess Kalara Thalasi piloted her small craft away from the burning wreckage of her once glorious empire. The stars, usually a source of comfort and wonder, seemed cold and distant as she left her home behind. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and determination, her hands trembling on the controls. The holographic display blinked with red warnings, the damage to her ship from the escape evident in the flickering lights and the occasional sputter from the engines. Kalara's silver hair, a mark of her royal lineage, was disheveled and matted with sweat. Her pale lavender skin glowed faintly in the dim cockpit lights, a stark contrast to the deep blue Thalasi uniform she wore. She could still hear the haunting sounds of explosions and the cries of her people as her brother, Prince Varric, unleashed his forces on the capital. The memories were fresh, the betrayal still a sharp pain in her chest. Varric's coup had been swift and brutal, leaving her with no choice but to flee. As her ship hurtled towards Earth, the planet came into view, an oasis of blue and green in the void. Kalara felt a pang of nostalgia. She had visited Earth before, as part of diplomatic missions, and had always been fascinated by its diverse cultures and history. But now, it represented something more, a potential refuge from the chaos that had engulfed her life. The ship's AI announced their imminent entry into Earth's atmosphere, pulling her from her thoughts. She braced herself, knowing that a rough landing was inevitable. The descent was turbulent. The small craft shook violently as it breached the atmosphere, flames licking at the viewports. Kalara struggled to maintain control, her mind racing with the possibility of crashing. As she scanned the barren desert landscape below, she spotted a flat stretch of land, her best chance for a landing. She gritted her teeth, pulling on the controls with all her strength, and managed to level the ship just enough to avoid a catastrophic crash. The impact was jarring. The ship skidded across the sand, sending a plume of dust into the air. Kalara's vision blurred as she was thrown against her restraints. Alarms blared, and the cockpit filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics. The world around her faded to darkness as the last of her strength gave out. Marcus Thompson was an enigma to most who knew him. A former astronaut and decorated pilot, he had retreated from the public eye after his final mission, choosing the solitude of Earth's deserts over the bustling cities. The harsh environment suited him. It was quiet and unforgiving, much like the depths of space he once navigated. His modest cabin, equipped with just the essentials, stood as a lone sentinel amidst the arid landscape. He was out collecting water from a small, rare spring when he saw the fireball streak across the sky. Instinctively, his training kicked in, and he knew it wasn't a meteor. Grabbing his binoculars, he tracked the object's trajectory until it vanished over the horizon. His curiosity piqued. He hurried to his off-road vehicle and set off toward the crash site. As Marcus approached, the wreckage came into view. A small, sleek spacecraft, unlike any Earth-made design. The hull was scorched and dented, but the ship was mostly intact. He scanned the area, spotting movement inside the cockpit. His pace quickened, and he clambered onto the craft, peering through the cracked canopy. Inside, amidst a tangle of wires and shattered screens, lay Kalara. Her alien appearance startled Marcus momentarily, but he quickly noted her injuries: cuts, bruises, and a worrying gash on her forehead. He carefully pried open the canopy and reached in, gently lifting her unconscious form. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he could feel her shallow breaths. He carried her to his vehicle, placing her in the passenger seat. As he secured her, he noticed the strange technology and symbols adorning her uniform. He'd heard of the Thalasi, one of the more advanced and enigmatic species in the galaxy, but he'd never seen one up close. With no time to lose, he drove back to his cabin, every bump in the road making him wince on her behalf. Back at the cabin, Marcus laid Kalara on a cot and tended to her wounds as best he could. He retrieved a medical kit from his old space gear, unsure if human medicines would even work on her. As he cleaned the cut on her forehead, Kalara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She recoiled slightly, her violet eyes locking onto his. It's okay, Marcus said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm here to help. Kalara's eyes darted around the room, taking in her surroundings. She recognized the human from their brief interactions during past diplomatic missions. Her mind raced, trying to process her situation. She attempted to sit up, but Marcus gently pushed her back down. Easy, he said. You're injured. Just rest for now. She hesitated, then nodded, too weak to argue. Her mind was foggy, but the urgency of her situation pressed down on her. I need your help, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Please. Marcus leaned in, curious and cautious. Who are you? He asked. Why are you here? She hesitated for a moment, then met his gaze. I am Kalara, Princess of the Thalasi Empire, she confessed, her voice trembling. My brother has overthrown the government. He's taken control of our military and is hunting me down. I need asylum. Please, help me. The weight of her words hung in the air. Marcus studied her, realizing the gravity of the situation. He knew harboring an alien princess, especially one fleeing a coup, could have severe repercussions. But the desperation in her eyes stirred something in him, a sense of duty perhaps, or a desire to do something meaningful again. He took a deep breath and nodded. All right, he said, I'll help you. But we need to be careful. This isn't going to be easy. Kalara closed her eyes, relief washing over her. She had found an ally, at least for now. As she drifted back into unconsciousness, Marcus sat beside her, contemplating the path they had just set upon. The arrival of the desperate alien princess marked the beginning of an uncertain journey, one that would test both their limits and reshape the fate of two worlds. Kalara awoke to the soft glow of a lamp, its light casting long shadows across the room. The pain in her head had dulled to a throbbing ache, and the tightness of bandages around her wounds reminded her of the crash. She shifted slightly, the cot beneath her creaking. The room was small, but filled with remnants of a life lived among the stars. Photographs of spacecraft, old mission patches, and a framed certificate of commendation. It was a curious mix of the mundane and the extraordinary. Marcus sat at a wooden table across the room, focused on a small, outdated computer terminal. He glanced up when he heard her stir, setting down the device he was tinkering with. His rugged features were softened by a genuine concern, a stark contrast to the hardened persona of a man who had spent years in isolation. How are you feeling? He asked, standing and approaching her cot. Kalara tried to sit up, this time with more success. Better, she replied, her voice still weak. Thank you for helping me. Marcus nodded, grabbing a chair and sitting beside her. You don't need to thank me, just doing what anyone would, he said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Harboring an alien princess fleeing from a galactic civil war was far from a normal situation. Kalara took a deep breath, steadying herself. We don't have much time, she began, urgency creeping into her voice. My brother's forces will be looking for me. Earth may not be their first priority, but they'll come here eventually. I can't stay hidden for long. Marcus leaned back, crossing his arms. And what do you want me to do? I'm just one person, not some interstellar diplomat or soldier. She looked him in the eye, her expression resolute. I need protection, she said, choosing her words carefully. I need to stay hidden until I can find a way to contact loyalists within my empire. But more than that, I need you to take me as a slave. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at her, disbelief etched on his face. A slave? He repeated, as if he hadn't heard her correctly. Why would you? It's the only way, Kalara interrupted, her voice firm. In Thalasi culture, slavery is a dishonorable state, but it has its uses. It's a binding contract that cannot be easily broken. If I am your slave, it grants me certain protections, even under Thalasi law. It would prevent any diplomatic incidents between our peoples and give me time to regroup. Marcus shook his head, struggling to process her words. You can't be serious. I can't just own someone. That's not how things work here. Kalara's eyes softened, a hint of sadness creeping into her expression. I know it's not ideal, it's degrading even, but it's the only way to ensure my safety. My brother's forces won't risk a direct confrontation if they believe I'm already under someone else's control. It's a temporary measure until we can figure out our next steps. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustration and confusion warring on his face. He stood up and paced the room, trying to make sense of the situation. "This is insane," he muttered. "You're asking me to take responsibility for you, to risk my life and potentially cause an intergalactic incident." Kalara watched him, her expression unwavering. "I have no other choice," she said quietly. "And neither do you. If my brother finds me, he'll kill me and anyone who helped me. But if we do this, if you agree to take me in, we can buy time. We can find a way to end this without bloodshed." Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her, seeing the determination and fear in her eyes. He knew she was right. The situation was dire, and they had few options. The idea of slavery repulsed him, but he couldn't ignore the practicality of her proposal. It was a means to an end, a temporary solution to a complex problem. He sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "Fine," he said finally, his voice low. "I'll do it. But let's make one thing clear. I don't own you. This is just a cover, a way to keep you safe. As far as I'm concerned, you're free to leave whenever you want." Kalara nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I promise I won't make this any harder than it needs to be." They sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of their agreement settling between them. Marcus returned to the table and began rummaging through a drawer, pulling out a small silver device. He handed it to Kalara, who looked at it curiously. "What's this?" she asked. "A translator," he explained. "It'll help you understand our language and customs. It also has a basic database of Earth's laws and protocols. If we're going to pull this off, you'll need to blend in as much as possible." Kalara nodded and placed the device on her wrist, activating it. A soft hum filled the room as it synced with her neural patterns. She felt a brief tingling sensation, then a flood of information filled her mind, adjusting her understanding of English and Earth customs. It was disorienting but necessary. Marcus watched her, then added, "There's a small town not far from here. We can go there tomorrow, get you some clothes and supplies. You'll need to stay low-key, avoid drawing attention." Kalara agreed, already thinking ahead. "We'll also need to set up a secure communication line. I need to reach out to my loyalists, let them know I'm alive and safe." Marcus nodded. "I can help with that. I still have some contacts from my days with the Space Force. We can use their network to send a discreet message." With their plan taking shape, Kalara felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but she had an ally, someone willing to stand by her despite the risks. For the first time since the coup, she felt a semblance of control over her fate. As the night wore on, they continued to discuss their next steps, unaware of the challenges and trials that awaited them. The proposal had been made, and a fragile partnership formed. Together they would navigate the treacherous path before them, each step bringing them closer to a resolution or disaster. The sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Kalara stood outside Marcus's cabin, wearing simple Earth clothes, a loose shirt, jeans, and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her pale skin from the sun. She felt out of place, her regal bearing at odds with the casual attire, but it was necessary to blend in. The translator on her wrist had adjusted her accent, making her sound like any other Earthling, albeit with a slight formal tone. Marcus emerged from the cabin carrying a small backpack filled with essentials. He looked her over, nodding in approval. "You look normal," he said, a hint of a smile on his lips. "Ready to go?" Kalara nodded, her expression serious. "As ready as I'll ever be." They set off in Marcus's old off-road vehicle, the engine roaring to life. The drive to the nearest town was quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath the tires. Kalara stared out the window, lost in thought. She had never imagined herself in this situation, far from her people, hiding on a distant planet. Her mind wandered to her loyalists, the few who remained faithful to her. She hoped they were safe and that she could reach them soon. As they neared the town, Marcus glanced at her. "Remember, stay close and don't draw attention. We're just here to get supplies and set up a communication line. Kylara nodded, adjusting the hat on her head. The town was small, a cluster of buildings surrounded by vast stretches of desert. They parked the vehicle and made their way to a general store. Inside, it was cool and dimly lit, shelves stocked with various goods. Marcus led the way, picking up items and placing them in a basket. Kylara followed, her eyes scanning the store. She felt a pang of discomfort, aware of the stares from a few curious locals. To them, she was just another stranger, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She kept her head down, trying to appear as inconspicuous as possible. After gathering the supplies, they approached the counter. The clerk, an older man with a friendly smile, rang up their purchases. "Haven't seen you two around here before," he remarked casually. "Passing through?" Marcus smiled, nodding. "Yeah, just needed to stock up. We're heading back out to the cabin." The clerk nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. "Well, you two take care now. It's a hot one today." They paid and left the store, stepping into the bright sunlight. As they loaded the supplies into the vehicle, Marcus glanced around, his expression tense. Kylara noticed and followed his gaze. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted a group of men at the edge of the parking lot, watching them intently. They were dressed in civilian clothes, but their posture and the way they carried themselves were unmistakable. Soldiers. "Get in the car," Marcus whispered, his voice urgent. Kylara didn't need to be told twice. She climbed into the passenger seat, her hands shaking. Marcus started the engine, and they sped out of the parking lot, the tires kicking up dust. As they drove, Kylara looked back and saw the men climbing into a black SUV. "Who are they?" she asked, fear lacing her voice. "Trouble," Marcus replied grimly. "Probably Varric's men. They've found us." Panic surged through Kylara. "What do we do?" Marcus glanced at her, his expression determined. "We lose them." He floored the gas pedal, the vehicle lurching forward. They sped down the dusty road, the black SUV in hot pursuit. Kylara gripped the seat, her heart pounding. The desert landscape blurred around them, the wind whipping through the open windows. As they raced away from the town, Marcus took a sharp turn onto a narrow dirt road. The vehicle bounced and jolted, the rough terrain making the ride treacherous. Kylara clung to the door, her eyes wide with fear. She glanced back and saw the SUV struggling to keep up, the road too uneven for its tires. Marcus grinned, a wild look in his eyes. "Hold on," he shouted, veering off the road entirely. They plunged into the open desert, the vehicle skidding across the sand. Kylara braced herself, the rough ride jostling her. The SUV followed, but it was losing ground, the sand bogging it down. They sped across the dunes, the sun beating down on them. Kylara glanced at Marcus, who was focused on the horizon, his face set in concentration. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engine. "There's an old mining site up ahead," Marcus replied. "It's abandoned, but there's a network of tunnels. We can hide there and figure out our next move." Kylara nodded, trusting him. As they neared the mining site, she looked back and saw the SUV still struggling in the distance. They had gained enough of a lead to disappear into the tunnels undetected. Marcus slowed the vehicle as they approached the entrance, a gaping maw in the side of a rocky hill. They drove inside, the darkness swallowing them. Marcus parked the vehicle and cut the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. They sat in the dark for a moment, catching their breath. Kylara could hear her heart pounding in her ears, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "Are we safe?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "For now," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "But we need to move deeper into the tunnels. They might come looking." They grabbed their supplies and ventured deeper into the mine, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. The air was cool and musty, the walls lined with old mining equipment and rusted rails. Kylara felt a shiver run down her spine, the weight of the earth above them oppressive. They found a small alcove and set up camp, using their supplies to create a makeshift shelter. Marcus pulled out a portable scanner and set it up, monitoring for any signs of pursuit. Kylara sat on a crate, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't stay hidden forever, but she had to figure out a way to contact her loyalists without exposing their location. Marcus joined her, his expression serious. "We can't stay here long," he said. "We need to send that message and find a way off planet." Kalara nodded, determination replacing her fear. "I'll record a message and send it through the EDC network. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Marcus agreed and handed her a small recording device. Kalara took a deep breath, composing herself. She knew the weight of her words, the impact they could have on her people. She pressed the record button and began speaking, her voice steady and clear. "This is Princess Kalara of the Thalasi Empire," she began. "To all loyalists and those who still believe in our cause, I am alive and safe. But our situation is dire. My brother, Prince Varric, has betrayed us and seized control of the Empire. I call upon all who are loyal to the true Thalasi to stand against him. We must end this conflict and restore peace to our people." She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I will continue to fight for our future, for a better Thalasi. But I need your help. Please join me in this struggle. Together we can overcome this darkness and rebuild our empire." She ended the recording and handed the device to Marcus, who connected it to the scanner. They watched as the message was encrypted and sent through the EDC network. It was a small hope, but it was all they had. As they waited in the darkness, Kalara felt a newfound resolve. She was no longer a desperate princess fleeing her past. She was a leader, ready to fight for her people and their future. And with Marcus by her side, she knew they stood a chance, no matter the odds. The pursuit was far from over, but they had taken the first step in reclaiming what was lost. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and challenges, but Kalara was ready to face it. Together with Marcus, they would navigate the treacherous path before them, each step bringing them closer to a resolution or disaster. The abandoned mining tunnels became their temporary refuge as they planned their next move. The air was thick with tension, a constant reminder of the imminent danger they faced. Marcus kept a vigilant eye on the scanner, tracking any potential movements from Varric's forces. Kalara, despite the uncertainty, felt a newfound sense of purpose. She knew that her message to the Loyalists had been sent, but the waiting was unbearable. A few days later, their patience was rewarded. The scanner picked up a signal, a coded message from one of Kalara's Loyalists. Marcus and Kalara exchanged a glance, their hope rekindled. Marcus decoded the message, revealing coordinates for a rendezvous point just outside the city. The Loyalists were coming, and with them, a chance to reclaim her throne. However, the message also contained a warning. Varric's forces were closing in. They had intercepted rumors of Kalara's presence on Earth, and were planning a full-scale operation to capture her. Time was running out. "We need to move," Marcus said, packing their supplies. "We can't stay here any longer. We have to meet your Loyalists and come up with a plan." Kalara nodded, her mind racing. "Agreed. But we need to be careful. If Varric's forces find us before we reach them, it'll be over." They gathered their belongings and left the mining site under the cover of darkness, driving towards the rendezvous point. The tension was palpable as they navigated the winding roads, every shadow and distant noise setting them on edge. Kalara gripped the seat, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. As dawn broke, they arrived at the coordinates, a secluded clearing hidden from the main road. They parked the vehicle and waited, the air thick with anticipation. After what felt like an eternity, a sleek Thalasi shuttle descended from the sky, landing gracefully in the clearing. Kalara's heart leaped with relief as the shuttle's door opened, revealing a group of her Loyalists. The leader of the group, Captain Alaran, stepped forward. He was a tall Thalasi male, his silver hair and piercing blue eyes a mark of his noble lineage. He saluted Kalara, his expression one of respect and relief. "Your Highness, it's an honor to see you safe," he said, bowing slightly. Kalara smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Captain Alaran, thank you for coming. We don't have much time. We need to plan our next move." Alaran nodded, gesturing for them to enter the shuttle. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The Loyalists quickly debriefed Kalara and Marcus on the situation. Varric had consolidated his power on Thalasi, but there were still pockets of resistance. Their plan was to return to the Empire, gather the remaining loyal forces, and launch a counterattack. It was risky, but with Kalara's presence, They had a chance to sway the undecided factions and turn the tide. Marcus listened intently, his mind already working through the logistics. "We can't go in guns blazing," he said. "We'll need a stealth approach, something Varric won't see coming. If we can infiltrate his stronghold and broadcast a message to the Empire, it could rally more support." Kalara agreed, her determination unwavering. "Yes, we need to show the people that I'm still alive and fighting. It's the only way to break Varric's hold." With the plan set, they prepared to leave. The Loyalists had secured a small fleet of cloaked ships, enough to transport their forces without drawing attention. Kalara turned to Marcus, her expression softening. "You've done so much for me," she said, gratitude in her voice. "But you don't have to come with us. This fight, it's not yours." Marcus looked at her, a small smile on his lips. "It became my fight the moment I decided to help you. I'm in this until the end." Kalara felt a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude and admiration. She nodded, understanding his resolve. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They boarded the shuttle, and with a low hum, it ascended into the sky, joining the rest of the fleet. As they left Earth's atmosphere, Kalara gazed out the window, the planet growing smaller behind them. She felt a pang of sadness, leaving the place that had offered her refuge. But she knew her destiny lay ahead. The journey to Thalasi was tense but uneventful. The cloaked ships evaded detection, and soon they found themselves approaching the capital planet. The sight of her homeworld stirred a mix of emotions in Kalara: nostalgia, fear, and a fierce determination to reclaim what was hers. The fleet landed in a remote location, a hidden base used by the Loyalists. From there, they coordinated the final stages of their plan. Kalara would infiltrate the royal palace, now Varric's stronghold, and broadcast a message to the Empire. The Loyalist forces would launch coordinated attacks on key military installations, aiming to cripple Varric's power. As they prepared for the mission, Kalara donned a simple but elegant outfit, a stark contrast to the regal attire she once wore. It was a symbol of her intent to lead as one of the people, not above them. Marcus, dressed in a tactical suit, checked his gear, ready for the battle ahead. The time came. Under the cover of night, they infiltrated the palace, moving swiftly and silently through the familiar halls. Kalara's heart pounded in her chest as they neared the broadcasting chamber. She could feel the weight of the moment, the eyes of her people on her, even if they didn't yet know she was there. They encountered resistance, a patrol of Varric's guards. A brief but intense skirmish ensued, the sound of blaster fire echoing through the corridors. Marcus and the Loyalists fought with precision, taking down the guards quickly. Kalara, though unarmed, stood firm, her presence a beacon of hope for her followers. They reached the broadcasting chamber, a large room filled with screens and communication equipment. Kalara stepped forward, her gaze steady. With a nod from Marcus, the Loyalists activated the equipment, connecting her to every screen and device in the Empire. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice clear and resonant. "People of Thalasi, this is your princess, Kalara. I speak to you from the heart of our empire, to tell you that I am alive and safe. My brother, Varric, has betrayed us, seizing power through deceit and violence. But I stand before you now, not as a ruler, but as one of you, a daughter of Thalasi, fighting for our future." She paused, her eyes shining with conviction. "We have suffered under Varric's tyranny, but we are not defeated. We are strong, united, and capable of reclaiming our home. I call upon all who cherish freedom and justice to join us. Rise against Varric's regime, and together, we will restore peace and prosperity to our people." As she finished, the room fell silent. The message had been sent, broadcasted to every corner of the Empire. The reaction was immediate. Reports flooded in of spontaneous uprisings, Loyalists and civilians rallying to Kalara's call. The Empire was awakening, the people rising against Varric's oppression, but their victory was not yet assured. The sound of approaching footsteps signaled the arrival of Varric's forces. Kalara and her group prepared for a final stand, determined to protect the broadcasting chamber until the message fully disseminated. The doors burst open, and a fierce battle erupted. Marcus fought alongside the Loyalists, his skills and experience invaluable in the chaotic melee. In the midst of the chaos, Varric himself appeared, his eyes blazing with fury. He charged at Kalara, a blaster in hand. Time seemed to slow as the siblings faced each other, the culmination of their rivalry and conflict. Varric fired, but Kalara was faster, ducking and using her surroundings to her advantage. She reached him, a small, sharp dagger in her hand, a last resort, a symbol of her determination to protect her people. Varric sneered, raising his blaster for a final shot. But Marcus intervened, tackling Varric to the ground. They struggled, and in the chaos, the blaster discharged, the shot echoing through the chamber. For a brief, terrifying moment, everything was still. Then, Varric slumped to the ground, clutching his side, the wound bleeding profusely. Marcus stood, breathing heavily, a mixture of relief and regret on his face. Kalara approached her brother, her expression a mix of sadness and resolve. "Your time is over, Varric," she said, her voice steady. "It's time for our people to heal." Varric glared at her, hatred burning in his eyes. But he was defeated, his power shattered. As Loyalist forces secured the palace, Kalara turned to Marcus, a silent understanding passing between them. The battle was over, but the true challenge, rebuilding the empire, had only just begun. In the days that followed, the news of Varric's downfall spread throughout the empire. Kalara's message had sparked a revolution, and with the support of the Loyalists and the people, she took her place as the rightful ruler. She pledged to lead with compassion and justice, to restore peace and unity to Thalasi. Marcus, true to his nature, chose to return to Earth. He declined any formal position or reward, content with the knowledge that he had helped make a difference. As he prepared to leave, Kalara met him one last time. They stood in the grand hall of the palace, a stark contrast to the chaos of their first meeting. "Thank you, Marcus," Kalara said, her voice filled with gratitude, "for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." Marcus smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "It was an honor, Your Highness," he replied, using the title she had once tried to shed. "Take care of yourself, and remember, you're not alone in this." Kalara nodded, a bittersweet smile on her lips. She reached out and handed him a small, intricately crafted device, a token of Thalasi, a symbol of their journey together. Marcus accepted it, understanding the significance of the gesture. As he boarded the shuttle that would take him back to Earth, Kalara watched him go, a sense of peace and resolve settling over her. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with the complexities of rebuilding an empire. But she was ready, her experiences shaping her into a leader who would fight for her people and their future. And so, the tale of the desperate alien princess and the Earthling who helped her came to an end. Their paths diverged, but the bond they had formed would remain, a testament to the power of courage, sacrifice, and the unexpected connections that can change the course of history. Kalara took her place as the Empress of Thalasi, guiding her people with wisdom and compassion. Marcus returned to his quiet life on Earth, carrying with him the memories of a journey that had tested his limits and reshaped his destiny. The galaxy had changed, and with it, the lives of those who had fought to shape its future.